Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another one of our amazing, well, I think they're amazing anyway, Geek Talks with myself, James Denny, COO here at Sales Geek, and our beloved founder and chief geek, Mr. Richard Few. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12 o'clock in the UK. It's somewhere different in India and in Mongolia, to all of our Mongolian friends that have joined today, because I've seen a few of you on here, and our Indian friends that are on here today. So very nice to see you all. And it's super early in the morning for everyone in the US that is joining us from over there as well. So hello to everybody. So for the next hour, Richard and I, it's a talk, this one. And the reason why this one's a bit more of a talk, with some guidelines, some prompts and some things like that, is there's some documentation that we have at the end that if you want to know more about that, we can send you out some actual physical documentation of the things that we're talking about today. So what is today about? What are we going to cover? What are you going to hopefully start to learn and think about? And how might you start to go about looking about this for your business? So the title obviously is Get Sales Fit for 2026. Here we are at the start of another year, and already I'm thinking it's nearly Christmas. So we're on our way to wiping this year out already. But we say this every year, don't we, as a business, at the start of your calendar year, regardless of where your financial year is, but most businesses, including ourselves, will look at the start of a calendar year as a great opportunity to, how do we reset certain things? What thinking do we need to have to get ready and get ourselves through this year? Now, good discipline tells us that we should have been doing this back in December, November, and October of the prior year, and most of us were doing that. We did a series of events ourselves. Many of you came on and listened to those calls where we reviewed the trends and the happenings and the whats and the wherefores of 2025, and we started to sow the scene of 2026 leading to this event today. So Richard and I are going to start talking through some topics. I'm going to start putting them, saying what they're going to be, and then Richard and I will start going through them. But the last thing I do want to say about this is there are some supporting documentation that you can have access to if you want it, and I'm hoping that you will. It's all free as part of our gift of Geek back out to the business community around the world. So document number one that we've written, it's a fairly hefty tome. It comes in two versions. There's a light reading version and there's a heavy reading version. The light reading version is a mere 29 pages long, and then the really heavy version is somewhere around about the 90 pages. But it's a really good and interesting read. That document is all about what Sales Geek has learned from working with 10,000 businesses. And these are insights about economy, about working practices, about what works in sales, doesn't work in sales, and how businesses, small, medium, and large, might want to start thinking about their operations, not only for 2026, but beyond, what's affected us in the past and how we want to think about that in the future. So it's a big doc. It's our gift to you, it's our research, and definitely have a pay attention to that one. The next document that we'll have available for you at the end of this is all the things that we are talking about today, where we've written up, and it's being captured as we talk about it today, and to give you some practical takeaway advice of things that you can implement into your business. You're not going to do all of them, but you might do some of them for small, medium, and large business, depending on where you are in your journey. But there are certainly the things that you as a leadership team or as a management and sales discipline in your operation should sit there and pose yourself some questions to go, have we thought about that? So hopefully that sets the scene. I think we're all ready. You ready, Rich?
Born ready.
Born ready. So here we go. Right. Okay. So getting match fit, sales fit for 2026 is an interesting topic. We talk about it all the time. I teed up at the very beginning. But what does that actually mean? There's a lot you can think about in sales. There's a lot you can start to review in a business, and you should be reviewing the business. But I'm gonna concentrate this into 5 core themes that we will work our way through over the next hour, if that's okay. So core theme number 1 is talent pipeline. Now, when we talk about talent pipeline, that talent pipeline is the retention and recruitment of new talent, the development of existing talent. And by the way, when we're talking about talent, and I don't really like using the word talent, but everyone understands it. If you are a single business owner and you are on your own and you're the sum of your business is you are the talent. So investing in you yourself, as well as those around you, is really, really important. And understanding the pipeline of that and understanding what it is you're going to develop and how you're going to get ahead of certain curves in 2026 is really important. So we're going to talk about talent management. talent pipeline, whether that's you as the individual or whether it's working with people around you to bolster your business. We're going to talk about leadership capability. Again, whether you're on your own, what are the leadership capabilities you need to have? Because you still need to have them. Whether you're a sales manager, whether you're a sales individual, you still need leadership capability when you're working with deals, working with people out there. Whether you're a sales manager, sales director, or a business owner working with salespeople underneath you, there is a capability matrix that has been evolving over the last couple of years that is now starting to come very much for the forefront through 2026 and beyond. And we're seeing a lot of businesses not adapt to that. And we want to talk a little bit about that. Commercial skills, of course. Commercial skills are ever evolving. There is a baseline and basic layer of commerciality that we would expect all salespeople, sales leaders, business owners, etc., to know and understand and be have at a high level of their skills. But again, this is evolving. We're seeing that through our politics, through our geopolitical landscapes that we see right now. We're seeing it through how the economy shapes out through 2025, the echoes of what we saw in 2024, the kind of it wasn't very much here in the UK anyway in 2025, but it's going to have greater ramifications through 2026 and beyond. So your commercial ability and how you shape and navigate that commercial ability, what you should know and what you should get better at is really important. And the last two things we're going to talk about today are operating systems, or the humdrum of sales operations, that's process and elements of technology. And then the final thing, which is going to thread everything that we talk about, is AI. AI and data, which is the intelligence layer. So stop thinking about the term AI and just input the term intelligence. What is intelligence for you? Whether you're a one-person business or whether you're the biggest of multi-organizations, intelligence is going to be everything. And then how do you leverage the data that intelligence generates for you? 5 good topics. You ready, Rich?
Yeah, let's go.
Cool. Anything you want to add to that before we get into it?
No, I think we're going to cover all the bases, and I guess you know how my brain works. I like kind of like simple stuff, so I guess I've kind of got my own view on probably the 2 most important things for the year ahead. I'm going to save that for a little bit later on in the session, but let's go wide. Let's cover some ground, and then we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back.
All right. Brilliant. And if you want to ask any questions, you want to put something to Richard or myself, then obviously put it into the chat and that will pop up on the screen and we can ask any of your questions. So let's start with recruitment talent pipeline. Again, I'm going to be super cautious using the word talent, but I'm using it as a very ubiquitous term that everyone understands that. Talent is very wide ranging. It isn't just restricted to the reserve of someone that you might see in your business or yourself, if you look at yourself that way, as, ooh, that person is special. Everyone in business is special. It's just how you treat them that determines what you bring out of them. But talent pipeline, whether you're looking after yourself as the individual or looking after those around you, is going to be super critical. And there's a few fundamental reasons why. So there's a couple of emerging problems out of 25 and into 2026. So I'm going to ask this question of Richard about how he thinks about this and what we should be starting to do about it. So no pressure, Rich, get ready. Right, so the problems that we're seeing coming out of 2025, we're seeing emerging into 2026. Again, things we learned from 10,000 businesses. So there are fewer career salespeople. So for SMEs and really smallest of businesses, what does a career salesperson look like? Who are they? And traditionally older career salespersons would be people that have been in industry or in sales for a very long time, and therefore would naturally have learned a lot of the core skills, competencies, capabilities, and confidences required to be a great salesperson. What we see a lot today is transient sales. People that are floating in and out of the sales operation, but they're multitasking across different divisions, different operations, different roles, etc. So the skills and knowledge needed to learn at pace to be effective in the industry versus what needs to be career taught is different. So fewer career salespeople. So what you teach and how you teach is changing. So how do you think about that? Another big problem is there's more portfolio for workers to go do, right? There's more things that people can go and do in industry, in sector, in market. So attracting the right person is super difficult and super challenging. So how do you make yourselves attractive for the right career person, if that's what you're after, or the salesperson, to come and want to be with you versus wanting to be somewhere else? Well, that leads us to the third point, which is we see lower loyalty, right? I think there was a great stat from 2025. It's not been updated for 2026. We've only just started in it, so at the moment, but it was correct 24-25, which is the average life expectancy of a sales director in role is around about 18 months. It's often a little bit higher for salespeople, depending on where their careers are and their knowledge and skill sets. But that's a really interesting statistic, especially for the sales leader of an organization, because that's coming down, and we're seeing it more and more come down because of the fractional side of the world, etc. So loyalty is a lower barrier. So what do we do about loyalty? What are you going to do about it? How do you think about it? The skills variance is growing significantly, and the skills variance is growing significantly because of a plus and minus in industry that we're seeing a lot of. Again, what we've learned from 10,000 businesses is we're asking people today about what they know about AI. We are asking them what tools they know how to use and how they leverage it and all the rest of it. That is both a plus, and it's also a rabbit hole of misinformation, because we're asking the wrong questions. We're getting what we think is the right output. Someone saying, oh, I know this tool and I know that tool. Because we don't know that tool, we're making poor decisions off the back of what we think they know, when actually you need to know what tools and intelligence you need to know for them to come and be on your side of things. And we also know that the quality is a little bit lower as well. So fewer career salespeople, which means there is a skills level knowledge imbalance creeping through. We're seeing it through 24, 25, definitely into 26. So how do we leverage that? There's more portfolio. People can go do more things, more jobs on the market. We're seeing lower loyalty. The skills variance is very high today, and what people understand and think they know about AI as well. So we have to change that. So Richard, putting you straight on the spot, if you had to start to think about how to change that, how might you start to change it? And I'm going to have to reach around the back of my, careful what I'm going to say in there, my laptop, because my cable's fallen out of my battery. So there you go, first one. How do we look after talent? And talent includes you as the individual.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's a bigger focus on employer branding. I think a lot of businesses overcomplicate this. I think being attractive to customers and to people is kind of broadly the same thing. And I think there's a whole thing there around brand and around values and around your personality and identity as a business. And I often think that people, if they are intent on growing and scaling a business, they need to take a very similar attitude to the acquisition of talent as they do the acquisition of customers, and often don't actually. A lot of their focus will go on how do I find customers, and then they panic afterwards around how they find the talent maybe to continue growing or deliver those services. So I think probably just off the back of what you just said there around kind of loyalty and tenure, I guess the reality is we still have some of the same issues in sales, which I think people need to look out for. The first one is sales is still yet to be a considered, let alone an aspirational career choice for young people. So we have to be realistic and say that most people that are in the sales talent pool, most people ended up there by accident and would have arrived there from all sorts of different places. Some people come from technical roles in their business into sales. Some people might be ex-forces, ex-sports, whatever that thing is. Most people have ended up in sales almost by accident, and therefore there's going to be a much wider, I suppose, much more diversity in people's backgrounds. But I think that's a really positive thing for me, is having diversity in those sales teams. I think the loyalty thing is interesting, and the kind of the poor quality of applicants potentially. I think the first thing is you're right about loyalty, James. However, one rule that I don't think has changed enormously over the last 5 or 10 years is that really good salespeople, and I mean really good salespeople who are delivering consistently within a business, tend to move around a bit less than those that aren't. So generally, if you are solely reliant, and let's say let's just say you want to recruit a salesperson into your business, and you were wholly reliant on inbound applications to an ad on a job board, you need to go into that with your eyes wide open about potentially who's going to apply for that role. Whereas if you really have a considered approach to your employer branding, and you create an environment, create a business that people are excited about coming to work for, you are more likely to attract the quality of talent that you want, rather than being invisible and just chucking ads out at the last minute. I also think we have to be realistic around, I think generational expectations of employees as well. I think, transient is definitely the word. I think, jobs for life is possibly behind us now, and it has been for some time. And I think we have to accept that we are, as employers, we're only ever part of somebody's journey. We're never going to be their whole journey, in the same way they're part of our journey too. So I think being realistic about that, but that means, and I think, isn't it fair to say, James, that like in the same way that businesses never think about the prospect that they're going to lose customers, I think a lot of businesses don't often think of the prospect that people are going to move on. And that isn't always a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily cast your business in a bad light. Sometimes people just want newness, right? And they want new opportunity, they want new learning, that things change in their lives. And I think, again, being comfortable that is a really normal part of business is a step in the right direction of planning for it, and talent planning, and considering what your options are. Because the good news is you've never had more options.
Yeah.
Yes, hiring people in the employment route is one way, but the gig economy is growing at a massive rate of knots. The opportunity to offshore, to outsource, to contract in resources and things that you need in your business, rather than just straight up hiring people. And there's never been more choice for people. So I guess if you're on the call here as a business owner, as a team leader, as a manager, someone who owns resource in a business, I think it's a really exciting time, because the options available to you to resource the things you need to get done are a lot more than they were 10, 15 years ago, where you just had to hire somebody.
I agree. I think if I was to give one bit of practical advice for people thinking about either in the recruitment space, it's less about what the CV says. The CV is great, it's an indicator, but the old days of 10 years ago, where we look at the CV and say, this is what your experience is. It's about, what does the business want? What are you trying to portray out to people? Because people will find you attractive based on the culture and the way of working that you're going to expect of individuals. So bringing them with minimum behavioral expectancies, I nearly couldn't say that, is a really good way to start to understand who you've got, what you want for your future, so people that are still here and those that you're trying to attract in. It's a really interesting market for 2026. The days of just purely reading the CV are definitely done. If you didn't already do that, it is more about behavioral side. It is more competency based. It is more about the lived evidence that you can portray with somebody back into your business and how they're going to develop that. Because the days of sitting back and fettling your way forward are definitely long gone. You have to have a disciplined drive to grow your business. And to do that, to attract the right people and to get the right people to stay in your business, you've got to foster a right culture that starts to do that. Just before I move on to the next subject, give me a top tip, or give the audience top tip, Richard, on how you start to foster a culture that internally people want to stay and embrace and be a part of, and also external people that might want in the business can see and experience and say, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, for me, I think from an employer branding perspective, your values are your cornerstone. I think for me, having a really clear set of values, not one that you just wrote on the wall once and don't live and breathe. So for me, if you've got a clear set of values, it has to live and breathe across the whole business. And really your behaviors are your living expression of those values. So for me, when behaviors are good, make sure you reward those in a way that demonstrates to everybody else that this is what good looks like. Equally, you can't tolerate stuff which actually goes against your values as well. So I think for me, that's something that certainly here we've been really passionate about. We keep them at the forefront. Even our Monday morning team meetings now, the agenda is driven by our values. We give out awards every quarter in line with our values. It's there, I think, for everyone to see and to feel. And I think what that enables you to do then, if you're really clear on that, is then the behaviors behind those values start to become more apparent. And that becomes easier to then communicate to the outside world what your value proposition is as an employer. And therefore, you're more likely to attract the people that you want. But more importantly, as bizarre as this might sound, also turn off people that you're not right for as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, this is a true story. We're not making this up. And Richard could nod his head solemnly about this. If you were in our office this morning live on the 26th of January, 2026, we have 6 core values. A couple of them were on demonstration today. Geeks are brave was one of them. Geeks are always learning. Geeks have fun, make it fun. So we were learning. What were we learning this morning as our geeks were always learning? It was our learning thing. Go on, what were we learning, Richard?
Yeah, so in our little 5-minute education slot, which doesn't have to be work related, Millie taught us how to line dance for a few minutes, which was hilarious. Quite a good way to start Monday morning. Some more successful than others, I might add.
Yeah, it's true. So we learned a little bit of line dancing skills from fabulous Millie, and every week we now take it in turns to bring a little bit of different education into the business. Doesn't have to be work related, can be, but it's something different. Makes us all smile, makes us laugh a lot, as it did this morning. And then geeks make it fun. We told a joke this morning. Now, sadly, I can't repeat the joke on here, but Graham, our marketeer, came up with a cracker, and we all did laugh heartily. But again, something that fosters great culture, right? Something that fosters, even in the challenges of business and the challenges of the day-to-day humdrum, do you know what? There's something to laugh about, something to smile about, and something to be, thankful for. So something about talent, bringing culture in. I don't mean you all have to go teaching line dance, but do speak to Millie. She's amazing at it if that's where you want to go to. But have a think about what is the culture you're trying to demonstrate internally to your business, and then how do you live and express that? And then most importantly, how do you demonstrate that to an external audience to do what Richard, I think, really importantly says, which is attract the people you are interested in, that you know will add value to you, the people within your business, whether you're on your own, so that's 1 to 2 people, or whether it's adding to your client base, etc. And then who do you not want? Because for as many people as you do want, there's quite a lot of people you don't. So be as critical and as clear thinking about who you don't want in the business as much as about who you do. So other core things that we want to quickly talk about: leadership training and readiness. It is everything in 2020, 2026. That's too many 20s. But this year, we'll go with 26. It's really important. Every time a geek walks into a client today, and at the moment, where are we? January 2026, I think we're in 184 businesses right now, worldwide, across 3 continents, 12 countries. There is a geek across 184 businesses. So we're in there discussing, dealing with all the challenges. And most of those businesses, not every one of them, but most of those businesses has a business leader, a designated business leader. Every one of those businesses has a leader, because it could just be the owner, the founder, the individual that set the business up. And everyone has a responsibility for sales, right? So leadership is its own discipline, and then sales leadership is very much its own discipline. And then we must be able to learn to merge the two together. What we've seen in 24 and 25, and what we learned from 10,000 businesses, is most organizations do not treat the two as separate, and then they don't weave them together to create the whole of an individual. Let me pose one quick question to you as you're listening. For those of you that are either a sales manager, sales leader, or see yourself in your business as the designated sales leader of that operation, or if you're not the designated sales leader and you have a sales leader in your business, let me pose this question to you. What school of sales leadership did you go to? And what qualification did you leave with? Post your comments in the chat box below, right? So that's a really interesting question. What school of leadership did you go to? What school of sales leadership did you go to, or those that are working for you? And what qualifications did you get? Now, the reality is, the glibness is, there isn't one. There's no unified single school or thought of what great sales management, sales leadership, and business leadership needs to look like. We're often taught and learn on the ropes. And the biggest fundamental mistake that we see, again, what we learned from 10,000 businesses, keep going on about that, is people are promoted from the front line into first line or second line management, but are not trained to then do that job. And we see that as a fundamental error constantly, day in, day out, across just about every business that we've ever worked in. So question 1, how do you spot it? And 2, how do you deal with it and create a development pathway for your emerging and developing leaders so that they don't fail. So here's a scary stat for you. I'm going to have loads of them as we go through this hour. 80% of first-line sales, people that are promoted from the front line into first-line sales management, 80% fail inside their first 2 years. They fail for 5 fundamental reasons. The top 2 of those 2 reasons are they are under-supported and under-trained. So they don't get the training in the first place to know what it means to be a great leader, great manager, whatever the thing is, and then they're not supported along that journey. So what are you going to do to create the pathway of development and learning and education that supports your people? Rich, I know you're fascinated with this discussion. What would you say?
I think leadership's a really interesting topic in business. I think that there's a lot of information. There's a lot of books out there, right? There's lots of books about sales as well. There's lots of books out there. And I think to your point, in terms of like what school did you go through? I was thinking as you were asking that question, what school did I go to? I guess I kind of went to 5 schools, probably. I think 4 of those schools were key mentors and individuals that had a real impact on my career and my learning and kind of helped shape me as a leader. And then I guess my own learning was probably school 5, and there's a lot of content out there. I think this is actually, for me, I think this is a tricky area. It kind of goes a little bit back to the last conversation around kind of like talent. One of the things I've spotted and noticed, and a theme that I pick up societally these days, is that actually there is slightly less drive from people coming into the workforce to really want to push into those leadership roles. I think it's kind of, I think leadership's one of those things which sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds good. I want to be on the leadership team. I want to be a leader in the business. And well, actually, there are some downsides to leadership. And I think not everyone that pursues it necessarily knows the challenges of it. So I think for me, I think there's 2 things. I think there's kind of, do people really want to be in a leadership role, or do they just want the status? And I think they're two very different things. And it's very dangerous. You've got very status-driven people, and you build a leadership function around them in your business. That can be quite a dangerous place to be. So I think you want leaders for the right reasons. But I guess I think the biggest challenge for any business is it starts with, how do you identify your future leaders? What do you have in place as a business through your daily, weekly, monthly activities that enables you to identify your future leaders? Because I guess ultimately the role of any leader, not to create more followers, is to produce more leaders. So if you're watching this and you are currently in leadership capacity, it is literally your job to identify and help create more of you. Yeah.
I'm just going to go back a couple of sentences to something you opened up with, because it's a provocative question. What school of sales leadership did you go to? And it's done on purpose because it makes us think about, where does your education come from? How do you know what you know? Most of us self-taught. To your point, 1/2 of your equation was what you learned as you went along. But the other part of your equation was you had really good mentors. You had good people around you that you could talk to, that you could get probably independent advice about, that might not have been in the workspace. These are just really good guys and girls around you that you knew you could lean onto. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So how many of you individual business owners, if you're an individual business owner, sales manager or sales director, whoever you are out there, how many of you have a mentor? Okay. How many companies that have the ability to provide a mentor have provided one? Right. I'm guessing it's next to 0. There'll be so many of us that lean more on the I am self-taught, watch YouTube channels, read books. And most of these books, by the way, we review quite a lot of them through a year. We read a lot of them. We see what you guys are reading, then we'll read it to see what you're consuming. They are rubbish. And I don't mean to be too harsh on that subject, but they range from fairly awful and not built into the practicalities of how life actually is for us, all the way through to there's some good stuff in there. So how do you condense that down? So the question is, it's not an answer we're providing right now, but have a responsibility to yourself, as Richard rightly says, to provide new leaders in the business, right? Whether the business can scope for that, develop that leader, you might decide that you're moving on, going to a new opportunity, or retiring, whatever these things are. But how do you do that? So do you have a mentor? If you haven't got one, go find one. There's enough amazing boys and girls out there around the world that I'm sure would be one of your mentors. And if you are a company listening to this, what are you doing to provide that independent accountability and insight for your most important line in your business? Because if your leaders aren't doing it and they can't deliver it, Salesforce will never deliver it. So support them and support them well. Any closing comments on that before I zoom on?
No, I think you closed it.
There you go. Make sure you do that. The other thing I would say just about leaders, and this is not just leadership and in a leader, this is a leadership thing that you have to think about of empowering in everyone. So from your salesperson, your account manager, your telephone sales person, the sales manager, sure, all the lines that go above it, but the functional front of house individuals as well. There's some things that we have seen are taken away from them. I don't like using the word empowerment because it's old school and it's a bit there, but it's true what we're trying to do. So the thing that we take away a lot of from people and that you need to put into people is decision design. So how do you train, educate, develop, and empower, crappy word, but we'll go with it, your frontline people of all the departments and disciplines you've got to have decision design. So what goes into decision design? A few things. So the basics are, when do I act? And then you have to define what the action is, empowerment to act. When do they wait? Empowerment to wait and judge. And I don't mean judge in a judgmental way, but to assess, right? How do I wait and assess something before I leap into making an action? So how do I act? How do I wait? What are the triggers that create change? Change to act, change to wait, change to do something. These are all trainable traits that you need to develop into your frontline people. And then finally is who owns what. Within all of these different parts of that decision tree, empower certain aspects where it can be empowered, that the frontline guys take ownership of that, whether that's a bit of gross margin, whether that's ownership of a deal criteria, whether it's ownership of a simple yes, no based on certain criteria. Stop getting in your own ways of holding back deals and holding back the ability to create opportunity. Because that's what you're trying to get your sales teams do and get your sales management, leadership, and your business and marketing all to do. You're creating opportunity for yourself, an opportunity for your clients to buy or get involved in whatever it is you do. And you do that because you compartmentalize and you push down the chain, the decision tree, that decision design. So work out what is design factors for you, when to act, when to wait. What are the triggers that make these things different? What are the component parts? Who owns what of those decisions? And let them get on with it. Review it, adjust regularly, but minutely, not fundamentally. Otherwise, nothing will ever happen. Everyone will get afraid to do it. And trust in your people. Trust. All right with that one? Good. Okay, right, moving on then. Some things that we like about some of the core aspects of sales, right? Forecast literacy. We talk about this all the time. And it's one of the fundamentals that we would talk about in every single business. Like I said, we're in 186 businesses across 12 countries, right? Across 12 countries right now. There's a geek in them. And at some point in the dialogue, we'll ask about forecasting. And forecasting is a really important part. It determines whether you're on forecast, whether it determines whether you're going to hit a number, not hit a number. But most importantly, it tells you where to question. And that's the key thing about forecasting. It tells you where you should ask questions and the types of questions you want to ask. AI can certainly help with this. There's a lot of good AI intelligence systems out there now, either inherently built into certain CRM tools, or you can get them independent as overlays that will help you start to analyze key things. And the key things you really want to understand is trend over noise. So what are the real trends? Good sales management, good sales leaders, and good sales people should always understand your month-on-month, quarter-on-quarter trends, even your half-year to full-year positions. You should understand confidence ranges. Forecasting is always a range. It's never an exact science, never a single discipline. And within forecasting, when you're building forecasting literacy out, there's always trigger points. So what's the trigger point in your forecasting model that creates an action, when to act, when to wait, etc.? What's the action? And then finally, what we often see missing in forecasting is a risk band. So if you're doing forecasting right, you'll create a range, never an empirical number. So you've got a center point, it's going to be somewhere a leeway of 3, 5, 6, 10, I don't know, percent, either way of a leeway point. There are risks. We often call that in sales things called assumptions and variables. I make this assumption based on that's what pins these numbers up. And if any of these variables happen, then that needle moves, etc. So what are your assumptions? What are your variables? Where's the trigger versus the noise? And what's the trends? What are the trends in the business? What would you say about forecasting literacy that has to be on point for 2026, Rich?
I guess because of the time limited nature of one of these sessions, without getting like too into technical stuff, forecasting is really simple for me. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. So I step into a lot of businesses who don't forecast. They'll kind of look backwards and just move stuff out based on what they've done in the past rather than what they can do in the future. And the people that are doing it, it's either working or it's not working. And if it's not working, it's a really good opportunity to dive a little bit deeper and understand why it's not working and where the challenges are. And I guess if you're a business that is of a size where there is some complexity to forecasting, i.e. you've got multiple salespeople, let's just say, feeding into forecast, then obviously there's a lot more levers. Whereas if you're a micro business or you're forecasting individually, then I suppose for me the key thing is move away from subjective opinion and into data. And I think I would set anybody the goal through this year, get to a point where you have got a level of empirical data which shows you in numerical values what your conversion rates are, therefore what your forecast should and is likely to be. I see too many forecasts made up of salespeople sat in a room with a sales manager, and ahhing. I think this might happen. I think that might happen. They use the word think and should far too much in the conversation. There's a real lack of data. So for me, get data rich and understand at a macro level kind of what your numbers are, what your conversion rates are, and that should drive your forecast rather than subjective opinions around individual deals.
Agreed. So it's one of the big areas that we see momentum fail in sales operations, and we see why a quarter falls off or a year falls off. And again, this could be its entire topic all on its own. Your ability to forecast accuracy and consistently is everything. You know, it'll underpin your sales performance, it'll underpin what training you need, it'll underpin all sorts of different things. So your ability to create consistency with your forecasting is everything you should start to focus on right now. That's why we lose momentum. That's why then discipline falls off. That's why confidence falls off. That's why mental resilience will fall off, because we're always missing on those forecasts. So you have to be data rich, and it has to be the right data. You have to get your trends correctly. And if you've not done trend analysis before, there are some good books around trend analysis. There's some good YouTube channels I think you can go and watch as well. But get used to understanding and being able to answer it in your head. What are the trends? What did I do last month versus this month? What does that look like? Because trends over time takes out this stuff and gives you that. And that's where you want to start to work, where the range looks like. Then you can start to move that particular aspect of whether, if we're trying to go up, then we know what the conversion ratios are, we know how many we sold, what the conversions of this, that, that tells you, points you into where you're going to have to develop either your sales, your value proposition, your sales teams, or whatever it is that it needs to be. But getting your trend analysis right is really pivotal to knowing where you're going to land at any other given point. One other top tip I would give you, and I think I'm a broken record on this, I've given it so many times, and you'll have heard it, I'm sure, in the past if you listened to me about this stuff, is have a look at your pipeline. If you've got one, and if it's in a CRM, or if it's on the back of an Excel spreadsheet, or if it's in a book or whatever, what is the date that someone says that is closing? And there's two languages, there's three elements to this. There's the language of what closing means. Is closing a contract, i.e. someone has signed something, or is the closing the act of an invoice and cash in the business? So there's lots of different language around this sort of stuff. So if I close a deal, am I closing it because I've won it and I'm just getting them to contract it and then the cash comes in later? In which case, is your forecast geared around predicting when cash flow hits your business? Or is it a closed deal somewhere when no, that's when cash comes into the business? So be clear about where the monetary line hits your books, right? Are we working off invoicing? Are we working off cash, etc.? The other thing to think about when you're building out your forecasting templates and when you're looking at closing and all that sort of great stuff is the close date. There should never be in your pipeline, or if you're going to have a look at your pipeline right now, there should never be a close date that is the 30th or the 31st of the month. If it is, you have to sit down with your sales teams straight away and you have to revise that. Educate your sales team, educate your clients. It can be done. That if you have contract signing dates, and I'm being very generic with this sort of stuff to get a deal done where you want to build it into a forecast for a month, this is quite a generic statement, so bear with it. Work to the 5th or the 7th of every month. And the reason why we would say that as a discipline is because if you put the 30th and 31st as your closing dates, and you miss the closing date for whatever logical reason, client wasn't available, I couldn't get there in time, we didn't finish the contract, whatever those things are, then you've missed the date, right? You can't close it, you can't put it down as one. Therefore, it moves one step to the right, and the step to the right it goes to is the next month. And therefore, your forecast is already a month out of date. If you train your sales teams and your clients that procure a service that way, that your closing dates are to the 5th and the 7th of every month, and then they miss it, you still got up to 3 working weeks in a month to salvage that deal before the error goes more to the right and forecast goes out to the, makes a step out to the right, if that makes sense. So think about how you build forecasting discipline into your business. It's really, really important. It's the most fundamental thing that we work on so many businesses in an organization, is to how do we get them to accurately predict the numbers, and it's consistent. Consistency is the key. Any closing comments on that one, Rich?
Just got to be predictable and accurate. And I think
accurate, yeah. Okay.
The elephant in the room here is forecasting for most people is a really dry topic. And
yeah.
If we ever put a sales club on and the subject is forecasting, it's probably going to get the least amount of attendance. However, try running a business without a forecast and try climbing a career ladder as a salesperson or a sales leader. If you cannot predictably and accurately tell the business what you're going to do, it's almost impossible. It's just one of those subjects that I think people find quite dry, but such a core skill, both as a sales professional, but also as a business owner who's trying to plan the growth of the business. It's really critical. Yet I think there are a lot of people that find it what can be a slightly dry topic.
Yeah, agreed. So let's move on to some other things where sales teams are lagging a bit. What held us back in a bit of 2025 again, what we've learned from many businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a perennial problem. All right, I like coming up with the big words today. Perennial problem. And it happens, we see it all the time. And that is core sales skills. Now, I know you're going to look at this and you're all rolling your eyes like, yeah, everyone has the same thing. But there's a lot you can do about this. And we see the same fundamental mistakes time in and time out. And we see a few core problems, right? So product knowledge is a problem in its own right for one or two things. Sometimes salespeople don't know enough about the product, but that's not the true problem. The true problem is they don't know enough stories about the product and about what will make people interested to care and know why I should be invested in that thing. So we talk features and benefits, and I'm not a fan of that. So kind of okay to a level. We need to know what the correlation of those things are. But it's what is the stories you're trying to tell? And the stories run in a massive pyramid. They start at the top, the story of, and I'm being really, you don't have to use all of these stories, obviously, otherwise this is a very long-winded sales discussion with a client. But why does the business exist? What problems do you there to solve? And some of this stuff is very transactional. I get it. you're going to say, yeah, but we sell widgets, man. We don't care about this stuff. We've got spanners on Amazon. No one needs to know about that sort of stuff. And where it's super transactional, where I just want that transaction, there is still an element to that, but I get it. But for most of you, you are telling someone a story as to why they should care more about you than someone else. So product knowledge is great, but the ability to weave a story and to get people to care and invest in you, your brand, your culture, your thing, these are the differentiator markers for 2026 and beyond. Would you agree, Rich?
Yeah, it's the old adage for me of like, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And I think salespeople and sales organizations are desperate for customers to understand them, like understand what we do, why we're better than everybody else. Like you just said then, like kind of love us more than the competition. Well, the best way to do that is to love the customer more than the competition, and actually genuinely. And this has been relevant for years. I think it's at the top of this call. I said that I've got 2 big things for this year, and actually this is one of them, which is, don't think there's ever been a time where it's been more important to be properly EQ literate as a salesperson than it is now. I think with a lot of the efficiencies that are going to come through AI, we'll get into that later on, and how that's going to shape how sales forces look inside organizations, which is probably smaller, higher billing, and with a lot of the mundane tasks taken away, your superpower is going to be a people expert. And I would urge anybody who is watching this to make 2026 the year that you go and master that. Go and consume as much content as you possibly can around how to better understand other human beings, because that is your job. Your job now and your job into the future is to understand people and their problems. And you can't do any of the other stuff until you can do that. You can't necessarily tell stories effectively. You can't pitch. You can't elevate a pitch. You can't do all of these things that we talk about in sales unless you understand people and problems, have a lot of EQ, and demonstrate true empathy for people's problems and challenges. It starts there. It's always started there. And for 300,000 years of existence on this planet as humans, that's always been important to us. But I think as sales organizations, we're starting to mature enough to realize that is becoming critical to our knowledge base and how we operate. And I think if you aren't sat there watching this thinking, no, I'm absolutely clued in. I understand how the limbic system works. I understand the science of chemicals and oxytocin and serotonin. And I understand all of these things and the value of storytelling. If I understand all of these things, unless you're scoring yourself 8, 9 out of 10 plus, you have to go and immerse yourself in that content this year, because in a future world of AI enablement, that is your superpower and your differentiator.
I agree. And I think we're getting into the AI stuff as we move forward, right? AI will give you sort of the dry side of things through a statistical analysis, the ability to understand human behavior, the understanding of how the brain works, our chemicals, all that sort of great stuff to be able to tell stories, move away from pitch. We never say pitch to rich. Got to get that in there. I'm sure you got. If you've not got that as a t-shirt yet, I think you need a t-shirt. It could be for your birthday. It's the stories that we've got to get into that. And again, we hammer that home all the time. 186 companies, 12 countries at the moment. Storytelling is probably the weakest I've ever seen it. It is built around answering a series of questions because we get given questions and we answer them, rather than seeking to diagnose what's going on and expand a conversation, understanding business models a little bit further, getting into maybe financial questioning, risk mapping, stakeholder mapping, where applicable, even to the smallest of things. You can still ask a lot of those questions. But getting under the DNA of that is where those skills need to be taught, and that's where you have to invest. And if you're not teaching that to your leaders, and your leaders are not developed and rounded enough, they're never going to teach it to their people. It's just going to be that cycle of what have you sold, how have you sold it, why aren't you on the forecast, etc., etc. But you'll have more intelligence when you do it this way. The other reason why you want to do that is that's the differentiator between AI. AI does the dry stuff. You bring the behavioral understanding of how that translates to real human behavior, because AI still can't do that yet. Might do in years to come, but it can't do it right now. So you've got to bring that human behavior piece. So questions I'll quickly pose you. Activities you should have done ready for 2026. Every one of you on this call, I'm going to ask you a question, and you should instantly be able to go, here's the answer. What's your NPS score? Or your Google review score? What do your clients think about you? So you've gone into 2026, you've got a client base, or you're building a client base. What do they say about you right now? What is the voice of your customer? So if you're building and developing your sales competency stack for your boys and girls, and your leadership stack to make them more effective, more competent, you need to come from the voice of the customer as well. So this is the year of the survey. This is the year of asking questions. And it's not just about the survey where you put something out on the internet and someone fills something in. That's great. That's brilliant. We love that. That's something. Get that in anyway. Get your NPS score, Net Promoter Score, if you don't know what that is. You can do that through lots of survey systems, think like MailChimp and things like that, do that sort of stuff. But when have you, as the leader or as a salesperson or as a business owner, wrote out to some of your customers and said, I'd love to grab you on a call, and I just want to talk to you about what it is we do, how you think we do what we do, and all that sort of great stuff, and get your insight. Why did you buy? What challenges were you looking to solve? And it could be that there's really dry stuff in there, but that's okay, it's what it is. But also it might be there's some really rich information about what's going on in someone's head to get them there. This will differentiate you for the companies that do versus the companies that don't. And the companies that do all of that sort of stuff will have a material march on everyone else that doesn't. So spend time on it through this quarter and the next quarter and plan it out as an activity. All right with that one? Good effort. Okay. So a couple of other salesy ones, things to think about. Can you do this? Are you the type of business that does do it, doesn't do it? We'll work it out, but these are advice things about why businesses stall, what builds momentum, how it gets you going, and all the rest of it. Negotiation. Negotiation is everything. Negotiation is a daily practice. It's a negotiation dealing with conflict, dealing with clients, dealing with internally, dealing with how you make a decision, how you do all of those sorts of things. And everyone thinks they can negotiate. Again, what we've learned from 10,000 businesses and what we've learned from 186 companies at the moment that we're in right now, from the business owner downward, is negotiation is not a well-taught art. Clue yourselves up, all right? Get ahead of this curve in the game when it comes to negotiation. Value trading is everything today in 2026 and beyond. So research all that stuff if you've never been into it, but get what is value trading? What are the values that you have that can leverage people to go, yeah, that's where I want to be, that's what I want, and that's why I want it. Value trading is everything. Concession strategy. So build value, minimize concessions, but understand what your concession strategy needs to be. Understand the term anchoring and train your boys and girls implicitly to understand what anchoring is and what that means. We've got courses galore about all that sort of stuff. You want to go and find out about it yourselves, but get into anchoring. We see it so many times that anchoring is a failed message, hasn't landed with a client, and the client doesn't know where they sit or where they can move when it comes to a pricing strategy or a value strategy when working with your service. Now, you could be a plumber. Plumbers use anchoring all the time. I had a roofer at my house actually last week, as Richard knows. I had to work from home one day, Thursday I think it was, and they had to come and repair my garage roof, which was broken. The guy used anchoring amazingly with me. He started off and said, listen, this is going to be £1,100 day in, day out, regardless of what I find under the core. It's going to move one side or the other, but I'm setting it out there before I even get to your house based on what you've described to me over the phone. Are you cool with that? Should I come and see you? Yeah, I knew where I was starting. £1,100. It finished on £1,250. There you go. Who knew? And it was job done. I was happy with it. He's doing some more work for me, etc. But the anchor got in there rather than two other companies that I spoke to who didn't give me any of that sort of stuff. And I didn't know where I was going to be with that sort of thing. I knew it was going to be, some expensive, subjective. I knew there was going to be a cost to it, but I didn't know where or whereabouts. It's £100, £200, but at least I was prepared for it. And I liked his approach, and I got him there. That's just one example. It does work. Think about that. And the final thing I would make sure you're educating your people for, because again, go and ask them all. Go and ask your sales manager, go and ask your sales leader, go and ask your sales people, what's the walk-away strategy? Where is no? And again, what we've learned from 10,000 businesses, what we're learning from 186 businesses we're in right now, is so many people don't know where no is. And they don't know no, because they're not empowered to say no. Cleaner decision making, empowered decision making, find where no is for your product line and services and say it quick and move on, but get the right things. Anything you want to put around that sort of stuff, Rich?
Just a couple of things to look out for. I think one would be, I think as a sales leader or a business owner that has sales teams, just look out for salespeople negotiating with you more than they negotiate with the customer. I think salespeople often will follow the path of least resistance to get a deal over the line, and it's far more comfortable negotiating with the sales manager or the sales director or the business owner who you've worked with for 2 or 3 years than it is a customer that you may be quite early stage in building that relationship. So that's something to look out for, I think. Second thing for me is, this is going to sound like a real basic thing, but get comfortable negotiating. It is a core skill of working in sales. It's a core skill of business generally, but actually my observation would be a lot of people get very uncomfortable when it gets to that part in the process. You can see it, their body language changes, their word count changes. It's like there's a level of discomfort, and I think people sniff and smell that. So actually you're probably putting yourself at a disadvantage by almost looking like somebody who looks ill prepared. Number one, I think that's a core thing. Like, actually prepare, know where your walk away point is, know what value you can exchange. But like, if you're poorly prepared, you've got zero chance. But actually look comfortable, look like someone who's done that 100 times before. And my experience, both through what we do, but also even as a consumer myself, buying stuff, I find it amazing how uncomfortable salespeople get when it gets to that part of the process. Like, they've never had to do it before. And I think that fuels the other person when there's discomfort on the other side. So get comfortable negotiating, be prepared when you're negotiating. And to your point, understand your value and know when the answer is just no. And that can be the strongest thing. Sometimes just because people ask doesn't mean you need to. Sometimes when people ask, the answer can be no.
Yeah, true. Cool. Last one on practical sales skills. This one revolves around account management. Then we're just going to finish off with some things around processes. Yay, the exciting stuff. And then a bit of AI advice. So account management. Most businesses, not every business, has a cross-sell or an upsell capability, or something within their business that they can tag on to a main service. So growth in 2026 should be thought about expansion, not just acquisition. So grab new customers in, great. You have to look after the churn line. Stop losing everything out the bottom of the leaky bucket. So lots of sales organizations use different terms. We like to use a term here, or I certainly do anyway, called ring of steel. What's the things I'm going to put around my most important clients to stop them leaving me? So what is your ring of steel thing, that your fence, whatever it is, that you're going to put around your Pareto rule? 80% of your revenue probably comes from broadly 20% of your customer base. So 20% of your customer base should be ultimately massively protected, if that's the world that works for you. So that's number one, ring of steel, look after the leaky bucket. Secondly, most organizations that we work with, even the smallest of operations, like the guy that come and did the roofing for me, right? He's a roofer by trade, but he's got some cross-sell and upsell capability in him. And he talked to me about guttering, not his thing. Well, while I was up there, mate, I noticed your guttering's a bit poorly. But rather than me just taking it at face value, he dragged me up a ladder. I really went up a ladder. I was really not happy because my house, as Richard knows, it's high. And I'm at the top holding on for dear life on a ladder while he's just pointing out what I could definitely see is broken guttering. But he outlined a problem, told me what was wrong, told me how easy it was to fix. And it wasn't take it all down, get brand new. It was a fix. And he could do that, and he would get someone to come around and do that. So it was a cross-sell and upsell. So what is the cross-sell, upsell language and discipline and expertise that you need to layer into your business? And for any of you businesses out there that say, look, we don't cross-sell, upsell, we've got nothing. I'm going to set a challenge here. You might want to email me in, or Richard, actually, if it's a really good challenge, you'll take it. I've yet to meet a business where there isn't a cross-sell or an upsell opportunity. You might not have it in your portfolio today, but with creative thinking and creative commerciality, you can probably build it. And therefore, you've got yourself a growth and expansion model in your business. Not everything is line of sight customer acquisition. And that's the biggest thing I would say But I would see again this year that gets businesses really effective in 2026 is enabling leadership layers, management layers, and salespeople to really dive in on what that cross-sell and upsell looks like, whether you're calling it bundles or anything like that, special offers or whatever those things are. Your expansion strategy is equally as important as your acquisition strategy. And if you think you've got no cross-sell, upsell in your product portfolio, I'd probably challenge you that you're not thinking about it correctly. Would you agree, Rich?
Yeah, I think there's a time. I think growing a business is a seasonal thing, and I think there's a time where, especially early on, you have to find customers for products, and that can be hard, that can be challenging, that's a difficult part of growth. But once you get to a point where you've actually got some customers, then I think kind of like phase two is it's easier to create products for customers than it is to find customers for products, if that makes sense. So I think you're absolutely right. If there isn't a natural opportunity for a cross-sell and upsell, then maybe now's the time to engineer it. I think outside of that, for me, I would definitely say customer intimacy. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about kind of EQ, understanding people, understanding problems. I think customer intimacy is massively important. I think people overestimate their current level of intimacy, and then maybe not making their customers feel quite as special as they think they are. And again, generally unloved or underserviced customers are far more likely to go and renew or go and spend their money somewhere else. So 2026, in whatever your customer intimacy rate is at the moment, however you look at that and measure that, find a layer, because somebody else will if you don't.
Yeah, good one. Right, okay, we're going to move into the most exciting topic of all for this. So we're going to run over a little bit because I think there was a lengthy introduction on this one, wasn't there? Processes, CRMs, yay! A bit like forecasting, it's often considered the driest subject, right? And people are like, ugh, really? A process? A CRM? Who cares? Salespeople hate them. Management live off of them, supposedly. But what we see, what we learn from 10,000 businesses and 186 businesses we're in right now, is there is an absolute disconnect between the relationship of what a CRM should be doing versus what it does do, and the relationship between sales and management and how it fuels an organization through any financial year, let alone 2026. So again, what stalls momentum, what you should and think you should be doing about it in 2026. So I think we're going to probably give you some practical advice that would have been in 2025. But again, I got to be honest with you, if any one of you on here called us into your business tomorrow and we were to go and have a look at this after what we're about to say to you, we would find the same problems because you just haven't done it. And you haven't done it not because no one wants to do it or there's a lack of discipline, knowledge or skills to be able to do it. It's just an art form that's just left to a sideline, and it shouldn't be. It's a diligent process of consistency that will form the backbone of everything that is consistent in your business. It's great CRM, great reporting, and then integrated with the final subject in a second, which is AI. So a couple of things that I would say to start us off. Most of you will have a CRM system, whether you're using an Excel spreadsheet, that's still CRM, right? Customer relationship management. If it's got 2 columns, 200 columns, you've got something in there. So it is a system of some nature. There are clients that we've worked with, that I personally work with, that have had all of their stuff in here in a notebook. That's still a CRM platform. Then, of course, you're into your main tools. We're CRM agnostic. We don't care about what it is you've got. But the first principles are, it is process over platform. Work out what it is you are trying to achieve, what data you need to see to inform what levers you can push and pull to give you the insights to make strategically clever and important decisions, either at yourselves or empowered down to move your business forward in a more streamlined and agile way. There was more corporate words in there than I can shake a hairy stick at, but that's what you're trying to get to. Once you understand all of those processes and process maps, you can work out what system you want. Now, the difference, that rule was the same in 2025, it was the same in 2024, and it was the same in 2023 and beyond, backwards. Today, though, I think it's arguably that is slightly different, because now when you look at all your processes to then define your system, there is another quandary we're putting in there, which is the AI layer. Which platform needs to have what AI tool either implemented, inbuilt, or do you need a supplementary system to interrogate or do something different with that data afterwards? Even again, the one-man bands, the people that have this stuff, that's your CRM notebook, all right? You can still use certain AI applications to help your business to flourish through 2026. You just got to know the right tool for the right job. So top tip number one, and I'll ask you for 2026, for everything that you sell and that you do, when was the last time that you sat with a team or with yourself and you literally process? I'm pointing that way, by the way, because there's a whiteboard there in our office, if you're wondering why the hell is he doing that? There's a whiteboard there. When was the last time that you sat there and you process mapped out all your decisions, all the things that you need something to do, whether it's a human thing to do or whether it's a system thing to do? When was the last time you did it? And within that, the key thing to look at is stage definitions. What are the definitions of why something is here versus here? What gives it the authority to be here? Because these things fundamentally impact your forecasting pipeline. They impact your accuracy. They impact everything. There's a big misnomer about CRMs, by the way, that when you take one out of the box, let's pick one, I don't know, Pipedrive, right? It's a very good platform. I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking any of them. They're all very good in their way. So Pipedrive is a great platform. Nothing wrong with that. But when you take it out of the box, if you've never used it before, you switch it all on, do some configuration away you go. One of the things it will have in all of the stages, it will have a percentage probability. That's not how CRMs work. That's not how you should use them. Just because you move an opportunity from here up these stages and then it goes 10%, 20%, 30, 50, 90, that's not a percentage that it's going to happen. That's just a percentage it went from left to right. There's a methodology layer that should be sat underneath that then gives you the right to ask the question, why will that be one? Why will that happen? Not because it sits up here. Deals all the time sit at this end of the spectrum of a process and can still get lost because of your discipline of what you put in all those stages. So think about the process first, your stages and your definitions before you think about what platform it is you want to be in there. Make sense? Rich, want to add anything to that? I've got a couple of other ones quickly.
Nope.
Because your favourite subject, isn't it?
No, just we're running over a bit on time, so I'll let you wrap this up.
So the last ones I would say is when you're doing your CRM platform and when you've got stuff in there, whether you're the smallest business or the largest business, deal clinics, reviews constantly. Why is something there as opposed to here? It helps you refine education back to the salespeople, into the layer, and then into the information that you want to get to. So there's a lot that we can go into to processes, but get it right. Get your processes right before you get your system right. Last thing I want to talk about for the last 10 minutes, and then we're done. Hopefully it's been okay for you, is a bit about AI. So the tools, right? What can we do about tools? How do you think about tools? What is AI to you? What is AI to everyone? And AI literacy in 2026, I think, is a more fundamental thing than we've ever seen before. And there's a couple of little watchwords that I would bring out for you. What have we learned for 10,000 businesses? So 4 core things. Bias awareness, right? So we have natural biasness. We see it all the time in businesses. We see the same names of products and services pop up or AI tools, right? So the first thing is get rid of those biases of what the tool you think it should be, because you've heard a name, you've seen it on TikTok, someone's advertised this, and then everyone's now using that term. AI is moving so fast that an application that was in your sort of sphere on a Monday morning is probably out of date by lunchtime on a Wednesday because something else has taken its place. So don't go by what the tool's name is and what it does. Ask first, what problem are you trying to solve? And then you'll look at AI tools in a slightly different way. The other side of things is we see it a lot in businesses today is this hallucination factor. And this hallucination factor works on the basis that leaders, managers, and all the rest of it get it in their head that they use the term AI and it will solve everything. It doesn't. It adds to a layer of what your business will be doing and how it operates, what it will function, what you could achieve with your business. It is not the answer. And there is a danger that we see constantly in businesses today where poor decisions are being made by managers and leaders because they heard the buzzword, got the bias, and they're relying that AI will solve it because I've read it somewhere, heard the podcast, and then they're just making the statement, make it so. They're doing the Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I might have the wrong captain there from Star Trek, who just says, make it so, and then expects everyone to just transform an AI set of tools. And what it creates is chaos in a business. We've seen it quite a lot. Doesn't every business, but it starts to create this fragmented approach and mistrust of AI in a business. And that, because we're hallucinating that this will fix everything, we get the wrong tools in because we've got biases about what we think we should have in. Some person knows this, that person knows that, and then it gets institutionalized in the business and it creates chaos. The other thing is validation, all right? We're not validating in business right now. Do we have the right tool and is it doing the right thing for us? Just because you got something doesn't mean that it's not going to change inside a month or a week or 6 months. Ideally, you didn't want them to be, but we're in that innovation style of AI right now. So you've got to think about what validation looks like to you to test the theory that the thing that you got in is still the right thing to this day. And the last thing I would suggest, and then we'll get into some of the DNA about it, scenario test it, put it through its paces, understand what you think that thing will do for you before you go implementing it. Now, we've got some practical advice about that, which we're just going to start to dive in on. I'll riff off in a second. But test these tools. The amount of organizations we've walked into, what tool are you using? Oh, I've got this, got that. Great. Are you using it? No, not really. Have you tested it to say, no, not really. I think it's doing the right thing. That guy over there says I should have it. And then we're no longer trusting these tools. AI is a fundamental thing to what you need in 2026, but you have to be careful of those first three things, right? Your own biases and those people around you, hallucination factor that you think it will solve everything, and validation, all right? You have to know that what you got was the right thing. Go on, Rich, give us some on that and I'll give you some tips.
I think you just got to play with stuff. I think be realistic. You got to be realistic about. I think there was a big chunk of 2025 where I think people's expectations were, are we going to go and find a tool and it's going to do everything we ever needed to do ever and work seamlessly? And I think people are realizing where AI is going to fit in the short term. Now, I think most of us think the long-term view hasn't really changed, but it might take a little bit longer to get there. So for me, I think all you can really do is, depending on where you are in your adaptation of it, so your adoption of it, should I say, is like just lean in, play with stuff, try new things. And most of these tools are pretty user intuitive. I think you're going to realize pretty quickly whether it's going to add value and create efficiency across the business. And for me, from a sales perspective, purely, I think we use AI in several different areas across our business, but keeping this true to form on sales, I think we have to look at AI as a sales enablement tool rather than a replacer of all things. I think it's going to take a lot of the good thing is it's going to take a lot of non-sales time and activity away from talented salespeople. And I think that should be the goal in the short term. If you have good salespeople in your business that are good at what they do, if you did a current pie chart of where and how they spend their time, often less than 30% of that time will actually be selling. They're spending 70% of the time doing other stuff. My challenge to you would be, how much of that 70% can you chip away at by leveraging AI tools to improve sales enablement and take away admin tasks and all of that stuff, so you can increase the percentage of time that somebody's selling at the moment. I would make that your goal in 2026.
Definitely keep your salespeople and your sales leaders in front of other humans. That is the most value you'll ever get from any of them. And then leverage the tools to take away the more mundane factors, whatever they are. But never let your AI tool inherently make the full decision around pricing, contracting, and major concessions, right? That's very important. That should always be human behavior, weighed up by data and information as you got it. Finally, I'm just going to riff off the last thing I just said there is biases happen everywhere. So be conscious that you take a rounded view. Your view might not be the right view. Just take a world view of what the tool needs to be. Factor in the hallucination risk. It is a big thing, happens to all businesses. It won't solve everything. Have the mindset that Richard just rightly said. Keep your people in front of other people. That's the most value you're ever going to get. And if it's solving small incremental problems internally in the business, you'll always be leaner and meaner anyway. So just treat it like that. And then evolve your strategy over a period of quarters, stroke 6 months. You have to run it, pace it, this stuff, because everybody else is as well. Excuse me, and I'm going to cough. That was really rude. Sorry about that. Right, so that was a whirlwind tour. Apologies, it ran over a little bit, and that's because I waffled at the beginning. It is what it is. So hopefully you've enjoyed a little bit about that. As I said, reach out to us, send info@salesgeek.co.uk. You can connect to either Richard or myself on LinkedIn. We have a couple of documents that you'll find fascinating and happily share with them. Just drop your email details, because we want to capture that. Of course we do. And we'll send you that documentation out. Promise not to chase you up afterwards, but happy to give you that. I'm just not going to share that with the entire world at this particular time. And if you've got any questions, want to see any more topics or things that we can cover for you in a bit more detail, then let us know. But for today, thank you very much for Richard. Thank you very much for everyone for putting this on, as always. It's been nice to see everyone, and we'll see you at the next one soon.